So here's something you might not believe.
What's up?
AI is starting to replace court reporters.
Hold on, what? You're kidding, right?
No, I'm serious. This voice isn't really me. It's a voice clone.
No way, me too. Looks like AI is pulling a fast one on us both, huh?
Exactly. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Today, we're diving into a new white paper from the National Court Reporters Association. It highlights the emerging ethical issues of AI in the U.S. judicial system. Stay with us. It's going to reveal why human precision is still irreplaceable in our courtrooms.
What's up, Steno Squad? It's me, Lady Steno, and today I'm thrilled to be joined by Jonathan Kirsch, a forward-thinking freelance court reporter. We're here to give you all the details on the NCRA's white paper on AI in court reporting. If you enjoyed that little chat and those funky tunes you just heard, you are actually experiencing the wonderful world of AI. Yes, that conversation was with a voice clone. And the music, it was entirely AI generated. And even that thumbnail that looked like Jonathan and I, yep, it's a high quality deep fake. We immersed ourselves headfirst into AI. And let me tell you, it's the rage across all industries worldwide. Even in our own niche world of court reporting, the NCRA has taken a proactive approach with a white paper that aims to help our legal sector, including court reporters, understand how AI may impact our industry. Today, Jonathan and I will dissect and decode this white paper and discuss what the AI revolution could mean for court reporting.
And I gotta hand it to the NCRA for making this happen and informing us of what's happening in this really interesting time, to say the least, where things are changing so fast. My understanding is that this is the culmination of several years of study. And yeah, even probably a lot of the data and references that it draws from are out of date because things have changed so fast.
They are going to be doing a lot more. Yes, this is 3 years of research and stuff, which is kind of interesting because I feel like most of us started hearing about AI the way the general public is hearing of AI basically in 2023. And to know that they've been working on this since 2019, even 2018, they have studies that they've referenced in there is pretty amazing. But yeah, stuff is changing so fast that I do wonder some of the reports that they made on terms of biases or algorithms, how much that has changed.
Yeah, if it has changed.
Right. That is true too. They defined AI as a machine-based system that can, for a given set of human-defined objectives, make predictions, recommendations, or decisions influencing real or virtual environments. So basically, that's how it's defined in the National Artificial Intelligence Act of 2020. So that's the definition that the NCRA is relying upon when they are talking about AI in this white paper. We use AI for a whole bunch of other things in our everyday life, like Google Maps or shopping on Amazon or YouTube algorithm. And even in our software, we do have some AI components.
AI has really taken off in the sort of chatbot model that was pioneered by ChatGPT, which was released to the public in late 2022. And then everything just seemed to be AI this, AI that. And it's really interesting. But it's not a new technology, AI. It's obviously been in development for decades, right? And we've been using it pretty regularly in our lives in other ways, like the way we interact with Siri or Google sometimes. It's grown into a really interesting new arena where it is poised to change everything about how we do and live our lives. So as one of the most exciting emerging tools that we have available to us today, it's really important that we educate ourselves on what is possible with this thing, but also what it's not really good at. And we're discovering more and more the limitations of it, because it has its flaws, and progress is happening so fast that government and corporate leaders still haven't really caught up to all of the things that it can do well and that it doesn't do well, that we're still, for some reason, entrusting it when we don't fully actually know whether that's a good idea. And so that's why papers like this are really insightful to kind of remind us all that, like, we are figuring this out as we go, and we need to keep each other as informed as possible, because it might be only in hindsight that we realize that, like, we should have done things differently. If we had known better, maybe we would have. Or maybe we do know enough, and, like, it's time to be more proactive in deciding how this technology evolves. And it's time to put guardrails in place so that way we don't start entrusting a technology that isn't ready for prime time to some of our most important, like, responsibilities, like the legal system. You know, that is, like, of utmost importance that we protect and get right. And AI is starting to invade that space in a big way. I'm just excited to learn more about where it's taking us.
In general, court reporters, we are using technology and we are using different types of systems to help us, right? Most of us, we have top-notch machines, we have great laptops, we have great systems for doing Zoom depositions and such. And we are really into technology, okay? But still, there is a lot for us to understand and learn. So one of the things that I've been seeing is some court reporters, like when they're thinking about AI in general, they're thinking about ASR. ASR, known as automatic speech recognition. This white paper is talking about ASR, that's what it's talking about. So basically, ASR is a subset of AI. AI is artificial intelligence, and one type of AI is ASR. ASR, it's focused on converting the spoken language into text. This white paper does go deep into this, but it also talks about transcription, transcriptionist, and we're going to get all into that. But I think it's really important that when they're discussing ASR, that we understand that it is a recording, like a system that is recording audio and then transcribing it. So we're not talking about voice writers. We're talking about an ASR system installed within a courtroom or in a deposition setting.
It's really important to remember that distinction there. AI is not equivalent to ASR. ASR, I think, is what most reporters think of as, like, the quote-unquote AI apocalypse of our careers, this specific technology that takes speech and puts it into text. That is in contrast to all the other ways that AI is simply beneficial to what we do and could actually add a lot to all the ways that AI can still help us in our careers without, like, replacing us.
Everybody is always wondering, people, especially people who are not court reporters, why don't they just replace court reporters? And especially now with all of this ASR that we're seeing almost everywhere, why are court reporters still employed and still in high demand? So NCRA is like, we're going to settle this right here, right now in this white paper, and we're going to go over all of those things. Let's talk about the risk of using ASR instead of a human court reporter.
It's almost impossible to overstate all the different ways that AI could still get things wrong. And that's what's really crazy, is just knowing that, like, this technology is still being developed and yet it's still making kind of basic mistakes, you know, mistakes that could really change the outcome of important things in the legal system, like getting a word wrong, you know?
Transcripts are so important. Like, transcripts are like the backbone of our legal system. Like, if there was no transcripts, it would just be crazy. People would be like, I didn't say that. Or, you know, there would not be any type of justice or fairness, because how could you even set precedent in prior cases or know, okay, this judge did this? The authenticity and the accuracy of transcripts are so important.
People simply do not understand how important we are to that whole process, right? Without us, nothing else exists, really, that we've come to know in our society. Like, if we are to have a legal system at all, there needs to be a record. And we're the gold standard in making that record. We always have been, because we know how to do our jobs, and the computers are still playing catch up. The bottom line of this paper is that no matter how much certain people or factors may want to replace people with a technology that can do our jobs for us, they simply can't. And there's too much at stake to even try at this point, because sure, we'll get there maybe eventually, like this technology will develop, but entrusting to the AI now the entire body of legal testimony, or even a portion of it, like every single time a court system tries to replace reporters with machines, as far as I've heard, they don't like it. They go back to reporters after a few years because it's simply not reliable enough. We've heard that story so many times.
Maybe eventually it could evolve to the point where they are an ASR AI type of transcript production is possible. I think in the white paper, it kind of addresses that anyway, stating like, listen, we still need humans no matter what. In their section titled Consequences of Choosing Digital Only Methods. So one of the things they mention is the quality control. So when you have a digital only system, we can think about courtrooms, but let's just think about the everyday deposition as well that takes place in law offices or through Zoom or with a witness using their phone. Okay. The quality of the audio will affect any type of ASR. So if you don't have some great sound systems, some great microphones, some great connectivity, your translation is not going to be accurate. Okay. It's not going to be accurate. So even if we got to that point, due to the quality of audio and due to people's connectivities, we would still need a human. We'd still need a human operating the system or just being the stenographer and getting everything down.
Right, exactly. I often find myself just dealing with awful audio, and it's like so frustrating, but it's like seemingly not going to get much better. Maybe audio quality will improve, maybe microphones will improve, but things will always go wrong, you know? And if all you're depending on is an audio, and then you're actually missing out on a lot of the ways that people communicate. Even through Zoom, I still get to see the witness. And so, for example, the other day I had a deposition where the witness's microphone, it took a second for the audio to sort of pick up what she was saying. She had to speak for like half a second. And as such, some of her shorter yes or no answers wouldn't really be picked up. And we all like commented on the fact that like it's very difficult to hear you, but she would speak as loud as she can, and there was really nothing we could do about it. And so, like, even though I could see her lips saying yes and nodding, it was really difficult to say whether I actually heard it, but we all understood that that's what was being said, and that's what went onto the transcript. And obviously, everybody was okay with that because that's really what belonged there, you know? But that's just like an example where, like, AI is simply never going to fill that gap. You're going to need somebody to do it.
Absolutely.
As the white paper mentions at the very bottom of page 6, stenographic court reporters provide unbiased certification to our firsthand knowledge as witnesses to what we're seeing. Any other document in like a legal proceeding, like you need a witness verify what it is. And like, you know, they say like the document speaks for itself in a lot of the cases, but like just being able to identify and correctly say like, yeah, that is what it purports to be is an essential part of all of this, you know? And so like ultimately we have to be the observers, because an AI is not really an observer. It will produce a document, but that document still needs certification by somebody like us. And so, yeah, I just don't ever see a human not being the part of that.
I've been thinking about something. Humans make mistakes too. Don't we make mistakes? Of course we make mistakes.
Not me. I'm pretty perfect. But no, I'm just kidding.
But if I'm making a mistake, I will know that I'm making a mistake. For example, if I'm making a misstroke or if I'm not hearing somebody properly, I would be able to speak up. But it seems like with these ASR systems that even if they don't understand a word, according to this white paper right now, it's saying it will either just like omit the word or it will substitute the word with something that might be completely irrelevant. It goes back to it's the entire definition. It's working on algorithms or probabilities, like guessing basically what is the best case scenario, which, you know, then goes into like the biases that they have, which is another risk.
Right. And unlike a witness where you can double check The AI doesn't give us that feedback. It just tries to do its best job and ports it to be accurate. And so it's not self-critical in that way.
ASR works on this pale male data. Basically, the sets from which it's guessing what the words are, what you're going to say, are based predominantly on white male voices. So there's that kind of biasy where it understands white American men better than anybody else. So that's a big issue. So basically, if you're not a white male voice, you are likely going to have errors in the ASR. Women already have a harder time being understood by these ASR systems, which is kind of interesting because, like this white paper points out, even though like Alexa and Siri, those virtual type of assistants are female voices, they still have a harder time understanding female voices than male voices. The other thing too is if you have an accent, there's a hard time with it. As a reporter, obviously I have hard times with accent. Like sometimes I hate when they don't use an interpreter and we just really need one. Or sometimes it's like we don't really need one. It's just the person's accent is so heavy. But obviously I'm going to ask them, excuse me, can you repeat that? Or maybe during a break, I can ask for spellings or any type of clarification that I need. Whereas obviously a machine is not going to do that.
Yeah, we've definitely all had those one really awful depots where it's just like, oh man, I can tell from the first, as soon as I swear them in, it's going to be a long day and I'm not going to know what's being said. Like for every proper noun, it's going to be a challenge. And that happens. Both of those things that you said, that both the data is better, it represents better white males, and the fact that our voice assistants are female, just like reveals so much about the gender biases within our society. It's really problematic. Already people tend to view the justice system, but distrust of our justice system is like probably at an all-time high, just societally. We don't trust things anymore.
Right.
And always been the case for a lot of people, they've never trusted the system because it's never worked for them, because it's been biased. And so to perpetuate that bias through this new technology is almost like being like, we can blatantly see how biased this is and we don't care. We're giving up on the illusion of impartiality. And then that kind of really makes you question the entire system as a whole. It's right. Like if we're going to try to rely on this technology that we know is going to disadvantage people, then how committed to justice can we really claim to be?
Right. So how they actually figure out, well, how accurate is an ASR system? They use something called a word error rate. And we can get really nerdy about this, but they have a way of basically how accurate is this? How many words did it get wrong? How was it wrong because it was plural or, the wrong part of speech? Or Stanford University, they actually did a study and they were checking on 5 different ASR systems, and all of them had racial disparities, and they had an average word error rate, of 0.35 for Black speakers compared to 0.19 for white speakers. So basically, straight up right there, it's telling you, listen, we don't understand Black people. Our ASR systems are likely to get it wrong when it comes to Black people, which is crazy, that they would even think, okay, let's still implement this knowing that.
Yeah, crazy until you realize that's how a lot of things work, sadly. And that's why people, are having such a hard time, trusting the institutions that are supposed to protect us, because we're very okay with just being disadvantaging certain people just by default. And, there are obviously a lot of pressures on why this technology is being implemented at all, due to the fact that there simply aren't enough stenographers out there to fill the demand, right? That's always a huge impetus, is just the economics of this needs to get done. And if the machines can do it to a 0.35% error rate, that's good enough. No, it's not good enough. We still need reporters. We need more reporters than ever so that we don't have to fall back on these deeply flawed and biased systems. I take back what I said earlier. I'm not perfect. I do make mistakes. I'm very curious to know what my error rate is. I never hear the back end of how my transcripts go and how much of an errata sheet got filled out, right? I would find that data really interesting to see how often people are correcting my transcripts, if indeed they are.
You would know. You would know. Most agencies are sending back your errata sheet, but if you had a complaint, you would know.
Okay, well then I guess I am flawless because I've never received a single correction, which can't be right because sometimes it's like I hear a word and I was pretty confident I knew that word. And then only maybe like a few answers later, I'm realizing like, oh, I was wrong. You know, it was actually a different word that sounded pretty close, but this word is obviously the correct word and I was wrong before. And now I got to go back and correct it. You know, a machine might not be able to do that, right? It might hear the one word and it might always get it wrong. And then it just wouldn't have that sort of self-awareness to question what it's spitting out.
As a reporter, as a person, we have our consciousness, like we are conscious of certain things. We're not okay just getting it wrong. We're not okay at risk of losing our jobs or losing a client or tarnishing our reputation. I don't understand how a machine could have that same type of dedication to making sure things are getting done accurately.
Yeah, that's true. It's not trying to feed its family doing this work. Whereas for us, it's like, yeah, it's a big part of what we do, but also who we are. When I was in steno school and there was a thing, I think it was called like the court reporter's oath or creed or something. And it like stated in really bold terms, like, I am the keeper of the record. I am holding up justice and integrity. And like, I sign my name at the end of every transcript knowing that this is what happened. Like, I can't verify that what they're saying is true, but it is true that they said it. And like, that's my job. And I think that's great. That's something we all take pride in.
Another systemic bias that these ASR systems have basically is that the older you are, the more likelihood of having errors. So like, you know, as you get older, your voice changes. So like when you're 60, you don't sound like when you're 16. Those age-related alterations in your speech production limits the effectiveness of these ASR systems. So that's terrible as well. So there's no room for it. Just based on this study, it's like, this makes absolutely no sense. And one of the things they say is like, oh, well, we need to inform people about this. You know, if we are going to be using some type of ASR technology, you know, the litigants need to be informed about this. But I can't imagine a litigant being like, okay, let's do it. You know, after hearing like just these things alone about the biases, I just can't see it.
Keep in mind when we say we're the keepers of the record is that we really control the proceedings. And I remember one witness I had speaking about age where he was frankly a pretty old man and not great with technology, you know, and he was just kind of mumbling into his phone for 4 hours. And it was really just difficult to hear. And like he trailed off in his speech at the end of his answers. And that's when only someone like us can think and be like, okay, sir, hold up. I really need you to repeat that, or I really need you to speak more directly into the microphone. It's our job to make sure that the record can be made. Right. When attorneys are talking over each other, that's when we are like, y'all, one at a time, you know how this goes. Because otherwise you're not getting a record. And they're just, machines just will not, as far as I can see, have that level of autonomy and awareness to actually interrupt people and say you need to do X, Y, and Z, because it's not working.
With everything we've talked about for ASR, like it should not even be an option at this moment for any court system or any type of deposition, anything involved in the legal system that is supposed to be used for evidence or to document history. We shouldn't even talk about ASR. It should already be game over, right? Another thing that this white paper is going into is audio recordings and like sending them out to transcriptionists. And there are courtrooms that have been doing this, as you mentioned earlier, due to the lack of court reporters. It's not that they want to use digital audio recording and then have them transcribed later. At this point, it's simply because of a need. They need court reporters. Since they don't have court reporters, they are using some audio recording and then having it transcribed. In 2018, the Pierce County Superior Court from the state of Washington, they actually did a study on this to decide, do court reporters cost more, or does the audio systems and transcriptionists, does that cost more? And the study basically showed the actual cost savings would be minimal at best, with the court performance suffering greatly from the lack of real-time reporting, and that there is no court reporting equipment which has the performance level of a court reporter. And I think that's so important for people to know. It's not like, court reporters are so expensive. Audio is very expensive as well.
Unless you're trying to turn every single court proceeding into like a Hollywood level production with like top quality microphones, and like you're going to go through all these hoops to just make sure that the audio can even be heard appropriately, like that's not cheap or easy. So there's just still so many ways that it's not ready for prime time. And yeah, even the economic argument isn't there. They're not going to save any money. You're going to lose the services of real time, as the paper mentions. And it's just going to further erode trust in the system. Like, it's too bad that so much of this innovation is being driven by necessity. Just like, we need to get this done because we don't have enough reporters. But like, that's not really a good enough reason for our profession to sort of transition into this thing that's less good than the real deal, simply because we don't have enough reporters. That's a solvable issue.
Right. And another thing is the turnaround times. I know everybody's layout is a little bit, every state has a bit different of a layout, but like on average, what would you say is a good scoping rate for you? Like, you're doing great. And how many pages are you scoping an hour?
Yeah, it definitely depends. Like, in some of my New York transcripts, I can breeze through those at like 60 pages an hour, especially if I'm like super clean. But now that I'm doing a lot more California work and they have the minimum transcript format, so everything's pretty standardized, I would say like 45 pages an hour is pretty good. But oh my God, I've had so many, especially lately, where I'm just like, oh man, this is going to take me a while to get through.
And what is a while? Like, what's your slow scoping rate?
Yeah, if I were to think about it and estimate, it'd probably be like 25 to 30. Which is maybe still fast, but like for me, that's excruciating, because like I try to basically scope in the moment, right? And like if I have a free hand, I'll go and make corrections like in the transcript as I'm making it. I can do a pretty fast turnaround time. Like, for the most part, these aren't taking that long, but when they do take long, they take forever. And it feels like I'm never going to get this thing done.
The point that I was trying to bring, you're scoping a really hard job for you, and you were actually there, right? And you're still having a hard time scoping it. Like, now imagine how much harder it would be to be typing it up from scratch without even having been there. It would take so long. In this white paper, it says that the average person, which I don't know who the average person is, right? But it says the average person, they can transcribe an hour of audio in 4 hours. Whereas a court reporter, we can do this thing an hour, within 2 hours. It shouldn't take us that long.
Yeah, if we're referring to like a transcriptionist on like a normal, QWERTY keyboard.
I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine trying to type up something, word for word. Because of that whole time limitation, when you do have a digital audio file and you need it next day or same day, they are splitting it out between a bunch of transcriptionists, which, leads to another issue with using an audio system and then sending it out to transcriptionists or transcription companies is, the chain of custody, the whole chain of custody is an issue as well.
And that's something I feel in general is like a security issue. Like, every day, it seems like we hear about a new way that our data has been compromised. And like, we deal with some pretty sensitive stuff, right? Like, I mean, a lot of it can be public record, but like a lot of it is stuff that should be protected and watched carefully. And if we're just sending these things around over like open channels on the internet, who really knows like who's going to be able to pick that stuff up? And then we could honestly be held liable in some way, by just doing the wrong thing. That's something that we all should probably learn a bit more about, is like how to best manage all of this stuff and all of our data. Another huge flag when it comes to like entrusting the machines to doing everything, because it only takes one solid hack to take that data or erase it or do whatever you want with it. And there's no going back after that happens. It's just this sort of distrust in a big way of like moving so digitally, so forward into the digital future. In some ways, it's kind of similar to how the automatic kiosks at like checkouts are like now getting this huge backlash because we're realizing like, oh, you might think it's just so easy and automatic, but it's actually just as expensive, if not more so. And like people are just better at this simple task.
Right. Like the robotic cashiers, people, they've done studies, like people are more likely to steal if it's not a human.
Right, and that's exactly what's going to happen here. If we do the ASR thing, it's like, in a way, it's stealing justice because there will be mistakes, and like, in ways that we probably can't even anticipate. It's probably going to be harder than we think to implement. And at the end of the day, you'll just be like, why did we even go this route? We were doing just fine with people, and we were giving them great careers and great opportunities, and like we shouldn't have like devalued them.
I know we said we were not going to do too much more ASR, but one of the things about ASR that I had to remind myself about is they did not develop ASR technology to get rid of court reporters. Like there are great reasons for people to be using ASR in everyday things, but not for when it comes to, the legal system. The white paper mentions it, like deepfakes and voice cloning, right? So they're talking about like, we already don't trust humans in general, like the Americans actually in general have a hard time trusting the judicial system, the legal system. And now, if they know we're using some type of ASR or we're sending our audio out to be transcribed, people are going to start questioning like, well, how do we even know that this is correct?
Yeah, that really speaks to the heart of what all of this is about, is just like, where are we going to find truth and honesty as we plunge headlong into this AI future, whatever form that AI takes? Because, already trust is just in general low, and it's not making it any easier. And that's why I think ultimately when it comes to like the domain of justice, it's always going to be a human-centered thing. Like, maybe we will entrust machines to do some parts of the legal work. But like when it comes to like deciding the fate of people's lives, like I don't know if anybody's ever going to be comfortable with like, oh yeah, let the algorithm handle that one for me. No, like I want a trial. I want to be heard. And I think that's what the question that we're all asking ourselves is like, how much autonomy do we give to this really emerging thing? And like, when are the guardrails going to go up, and when are people going to start making legislation that like actually gives us a reason to not be afraid of the potential? Because right now it's like very scary. Yes, AI is an amazing tool, can do so many things that we should use it for, and like you said, ASR definitely has its uses, but at the end of the day, you need a witness to verify the documents. You need a human to sign off on these transcripts, and that's how it's all going to continue to work. And I think by and large, people hopefully understand that. I don't really see like the biggest push to take humans out of the legal system in general, but for our specific job, it seems to be more of an option. People entertain it as an idea more without fully realizing just how important what we do is and how irreplaceable we are to the system of justice.
This white paper, and I'm not sure if that was its intention, but I definitely feel like it's anti-transcriptionist because it goes into like, okay, even if you're using these audio recordings, like does the transcriber know that it actually got it all? Meaning, how does it know that an hour of it is missing? How does it know if something was supposed to be on the record, but they didn't say it so that it could be heard? How do they know it's even an authentic recording? What if somebody gives you an audio recording and says, hey, this is such and such case, and it's not even such and such case, and here you are transcribing something that you are hearing on an audio and you don't even really know what it's for? And I mean, I think that even goes into like that whole voice cloning thing. Like, you want to tell them about voice cloning?
Voice cloning is just basically analyzing the way that a person speaks and how their voice sounds and using it to synthesize new speech that they didn't necessarily say. You could take this whole recording that we've been making right now, and the right AI software could be able to create sort of approximations of our voice, and then you could make that voice say various things. And it's getting better all the time. A lot of musicians, like John Lennon's voice, was recently sort of using AI not to synthesize, but to isolate from other sounds to create like a new Beatles record, for instance. And that's just one small example of like how we can just create, like we're basically at the point where we can create anything we want, and it will probably be a pretty convincing version of that thing. And it's going to be difficult, a lot more difficult to discern what was really said and what wasn't. And yeah, like you just said, like who's to say somebody purports that this recording is what somebody said when, and we have no idea, you know, and like there's no human to verify that it actually happened.
And I know some people are going to be like, well, who's really going to do that? And I'm like thinking, first of all, let's say we're dealing in the criminal court system. So you're dealing with criminals, all right? People who have probably already committed crimes. So if their freedom is on the line, trust and believe some people will figure out a way to clone certain people's voices to do certain things. And think about, even if you're on the civil side of things, you're dealing with $1 million cases. There is going to be somebody who does not want to lose a few $1 million based on somebody's testimony in a deposition. So I definitely see that there is that potential. And these things, voice cloning is so easy right now. Like it is really easy. Like there's apps out there you can do it for free. Like
yeah, it's easy, it's accessible, it's free, it's cheap or free. Kind of like Photoshop for audio, for voices, you know, like you can make anything that you want out of it. I read that when Photoshop like came out and you handed people these super powerful tools to like edit images, people were like, oh, well, aren't things going to like be counterfeit a lot? And like, how will we know? And that's like still kind of a question, you know, like it's not always easy to tell whether an image is actually Photoshopped. And thanks to AI and the lack of watermarks or whatever data we have, metadata around the creation of AI, like AI generated images are regularly mistaken for like the real deal, even though there are sometimes like telltale signs where it's like, okay, this is not a real image. Who knows? Maybe AI image generation will work out those problems in a few years, few months. And instead of making 6 fingers on people, they'll put 5. But the point is that like it will only ever get better and easier for you to fabricate things. And yeah, of course people are going to do that, like for all the reasons you just said. Like, do you know what people already pay for like expert testimony and for all the stuff that goes into these trials? Like, what's a little voice synthesizing on top of that?
Right. February 2024, OpenAI released Sora, which is basically a text to video prompt. It's just like AI video generation. It is so super realistic. They can make it look like you are right now in a deposition room giving testimony. So it's like taking deep fake to a whole nother level. Deep fake meaning it looks like you, but it's not you. It looks like a certain thing, but it's not that. It's just completely fabricated, but it looks so real. And so, I mean, even thinking you're receiving a video or even being streamed a video, and it could honestly be fake. I know this is totally, well, it's not unrelated, but basically it's one of the reasons I do think we're going to see more in-person jobs happening versus a little bit less Zoom, because this technology is becoming so much easier for everyday people to access.
It all speaks to the same questions that we're really asking ourselves about everything. It has major implications for our field in particular and the legal field in general, but also just like all aspects of society are now being challenged by this new technology, and we're still figuring out what it does and like what it makes us reevaluate, like the context of our lives and our institutions. And when things are already in the state that they're in, like it's 2024, like we're really going to test our justice system this year in a big way. And like how bought in people are to the entire idea of how we implement justice is going to be the determining factor on where things go, I think, in a lot of ways. AI is probably the biggest uncertainty you could add to such an environment, because it really is, it's still a bit of a mystery box. It hallucinates, where it just makes up information, and sometimes we're not even aware of it. There was that like famous example or infamous example of the past year where some lawyer went to court before the judge and cited and used AI to like make some sort of point. And the AI like came up with a totally false case that it referenced for a case law, or totally revealed it's like the AI just hallucinated this thing and the lawyer didn't even catch it, you know? And so thankfully the rest of the justice system did. But like that's the danger, is that it's just going to hallucinate entirely new things. It's such an exciting time that we live in. I wasn't quite alive or aware enough during like the internet revolution, but I remember like being told I was the generation when the world went online and like we're never going to look back. The world was never the same after the internet really hit. And like that's where we are for AI. Like this is like the 20s of the 90s internet of AI. And it's kind of a wild west, and it could go in a lot of different directions. And yeah, we focus a lot on this in the white paper, obviously, on some of the career existential dangers of AI. But we're also overlooking that like it is a tool like any other tool. It has enormous power, and we can use it for good, and we can use it to help make our lives easier. Like ever since you gave your course on AI and explained like what it was, I really had no experience at all with chatbots. Like I was obviously aware of them. I had seen people use them, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I never really thought about like how I could apply the technology to what I do. But ever since you showed me that and I understood the power of these tools, I was like, wow, like this makes so many things easier for me. I'm pretty excited about all the ways that AI is going to improve our lives and our jobs, while still being very skeptical about like where we draw the line. Like how much is it going to improve, and where or can we go wrong? And that's what I really like that this paper talks about and that we're talking about. And I hope that other people are able to start digesting too, because ultimately it's at the end of the day, it's still on us. We haven't given up all control to our AI overlords yet. We still get to decide this story. So we need to start educating ourselves as much as possible, because there's still so much that I don't even know, you know, and this paper only goes so far into things. But like, I really do want to learn more about the potentials and the dangers and be able to advocate for myself and my career going forward, because it's only ever going to be more important.
Despite all of this, courtrooms are still using digital recording equipment, and those transcripts are not pretty, okay? They're not pretty because of the chain of custody. They're not pretty even because of audio control issues. They're not, first of all, being a transcriptionist is a hard job. So imagine a lot of transcription companies, they have very high turnover rates. And you'll see these transcripts like we would never do this, where you see inaudible, unintelligible littered throughout these transcripts, and it's horrifying.
Yeah, and then it becomes useless. You know, it's like, why did you even waste the money doing that when you could have done it right the first time? And now you have no case because it didn't even make it onto the page. When you hear that statistic, like 0.35% error rate for black people versus 0.19 for white people, that's literally what the paper says next in that next paragraph, where it's like standard of adequate versus accurate. It's kind of just like, yeah, we'll go with it. It's too bad that we can't get the real reporter in here, but oh well, you know, like we got to get it done. That's not the standard that we should be holding ourselves to. Everybody deserves the best.
One of the ways they've been trying to combat that in these courtrooms is they're going to have like a courtroom personnel or this digital reporter basically monitoring the audio. But monitoring the audio, first of all, is you'll monitor audio differently when you know you're the person who's going to transcribe it. A person who has never worked on a transcript would not actually know how to actually monitor the audio. And so this audio that these people are monitoring is usually sent to people that are not even in the locale. Like you can be sending them to offshore, like to a different country, which makes it so much harder when you don't have the knowledge of the speakers or our colloquialisms. Like it becomes a huge mess.
Yeah, a lot risks getting lost in translation in a way. Yeah, even really trained stenographers, like the grammar of our transcripts is one of the hardest parts, especially to get in the moment. Like so many times I realized only after the fact that like, oh, this is kind of a new sentence now, that comma should be a period. And even on Facebook, where there's a lot of court reporting communities and groups, regularly see reporters asking like, how would you punctuate this particular phrase? And like, what is the real meaning of it? And like, even you can have all the words right, but you can realize, having been there and having heard their inflection, like this is the word they emphasize. And that's really the point that they're making. And how would you structure that grammatically so that way that comes across in a transcript?
Right. 100%. I had a situation like that 2 weeks ago where it was one of those $1 million commas where it's like you had to be there. You had to see how the person was saying, not only saying the words, but the gestures they were making to understand, wait, does a comma go there or does it not go there? And it really, really could affect anybody who's reading the transcript, their interpretation of, is this person liable or not liable? $1 million comma, but it was also a $1 million case. So a lot is on the line, and we cannot just allow adequate over accurate. Like that just makes no sense.
Yeah, right. Like trivializing all of these people's things that are so important to their lives. Like that's something I really do like about what we do, is like you get a really personal glimpse into like people's stories are. Yeah, maybe this might just be one of a million cases, but like for these people involved, this is like huge.
When we're in a room with somebody in a deposition or in a hearing or whatever, it's like you're now part of somebody's turning point in their life. This lawsuit is something that's going to define them and their journey in the rest of their life. And you've now become part of that milestone in their life. And, what I think is crazy is that despite all of this knowledge that's out here about the importance of accuracy and chain of custody and, timeliness within our industry, is that we are still facing an existential crisis right now. Like we're really in challenging times, because you're even seeing there are companies out there that are marketing themselves as ASR court reporting companies, or I've heard of videographers offering, oh, you don't need a court reporter. We're going to just record this and we'll transcribe it later. There's a lot of that happening right now. It's so important first of all, for court reporters and students, anybody in our industry, to really understand what it is that we do and how we can get better, but also to be able to understand the flaws and the risk and the harm of these inferior methods.
It really is the fight of our careers of all times that court reporting has had a crisis. I can't imagine one being more critical than this. Like I started school 9 years ago. It was 2015. Even then, there was like always that talk of like, oh, there's a shortage of reporters. There's always a shortage of reporters. And like that leads to all these other issues. And that's why every so often there's this experiment where they try to replace us with machines and it doesn't go well and all this sort of. And so that's where it all stems from, is, just like a lack of enough people doing this. And that's kind of like an ongoing crisis. If AI ends up being the answer to that problem, now is the time for us to be raising our voices and saying like, okay, well, let's actually think through what that really means and why we should go in one direction versus another. This is the time to rally, to organize as a community, as a profession, because we are the only people that really understand what we do, and therefore are the people that should have the best say in it. Because ultimately our interests are always just about protecting the sanctity of the record. That's our whole reason for being. And we want both of those are in our favor. The fact that we want to stay employed and that we want a good record, that's the only way you're getting a good record, if more people like us are employed.
The NCRA in 2020, June 2020, they actually adopted this resolution, which basically states like, hey, we need you guys to know, we need lawyers, the Bar Association, the court, all of these agencies, we need you guys to know that if you guys are using any type of AI or ASR, here's the risk that you're running into. The NCRA is telling everybody, these organizations that choose to use ASR, you are going to be responsible for the harm it causes. If you're using some type of ASR and you have inaudibles or you have missing parts of transcripts or there's some type of cyber attack and whatever, this ASR company or the company that chooses to use this ASR system should be held liable.
I'm in favor of holding tech companies liable to the problems that they create but couldn't foresee. And I'm sure nobody is trying to obviously make these mistakes, and they're trying to do this right. And I do remember, last year meeting somebody who, when I said that I was a stenographer, she was like, "Oh my God, I just interviewed somebody at a startup who's trying to put you out of your job." I'm like, "Yeah, I know. There's probably a few of those." She's like, "There's probably 100 of them." This is something that's actively being worked on. All these claims being made about like, "Oh, don't worry, we'll take care of the job for you. It's just as good as a reporter." And unfortunately, people are listening. But we really need to communicate that that's not a substitute, and not to fall for it, because it's happening. They're coming for us.
So what can we do? Like, what can we as court reporters or court reporting students, what can we do now?
Well, my solution to doing anything starts with just finding other people that are feeling the same way and talking with them. I don't bill myself as an expert on any particular solution. I just know that when we organize and we engage in dialogue, solutions will emerge. And the fact is that this isn't being talked about anywhere near enough. And if we can have more places for the dialogue to happen between reporters and between the institutions that represent us, like the NCRA or even like our software, like Stenograph, they might be implementing AI tools. AI is like bigger than just ASR, but like there's all these ways that we should be taking ownership over the direction of our profession, because first of all, we have that opportunity. There's nothing stopping us from doing that. And it's kind of incumbent on us to do it because nobody else is going to advocate for us. So like we just got to really recognize that like this is kind of our moment, our shining moment to come together and make big decisions about like what we want our future to look like. Because who's to say what AI is going to do generally broadly for all of society? But like in this one particular slice that we have a say in, we should exercise that voice.
Coming together is definitely something that we need to do more of. Trying to figure out or trying to communicate to those decision makers what we can do and why they need us to do it. There is Protect Your Record Project, which is an advocacy group for stenographers, and they are trying whatever way they can to get the word out, like, hey, you need a stenographer and don't accept anything less than that. And it's true. That's one of the things we need. But I also feel like as stenographers, we do need to make sure we are better than any competition out there. I haven't been working too much as a reporter in these last 4 years. And I actually took a Zoom job. I played around with it and I saw they had a captioning thing. And I was like, this is actually pretty good. There was nothing where I'm like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. It made me think like, if you're a court reporter, you need to make sure that your rough draft is better than whatever this ASR is producing. I think it's upon us as individual reporters to make sure our writing is clean, that we're able to keep up, if not speak up, so that we can make sure our record is what it should be, and to make sure that we're not taking forever to turn in transcripts. And like you had mentioned, our software companies, I think like if you have a great idea for how you can get into the transcript production part easier, how you can scope faster, and it's something that your software can do for you, or you think it should be able to, send in a request. Send in a request to Stenograph or ProCat or whomever you're using and say, hey, is there a way that we can do this?
There's so many possibilities there. That's why I feel like despite things, I am still an AI optimist, because I think it's ultimately a tool that we will figure out how to use for good. And in some ways it already is. That's a really solid standard right there to hold yourself to, is like, let's at least be better than the auto captions. Like, yeah, we all have to be as excellent at our jobs as we possibly can be. As court reporters, we need to be on our game always and keep that standard for everybody. But the reality is that that's going to be increasingly difficult standard as as the machines do improve. Like they will get better, and that's okay. We can accept that, like, they will solve some of the issues that they are currently facing, but that still doesn't take away our agency as people and our need as laborers to advocate for ourselves and protect ourselves, and that takes various forms. The more that we share these organizations that are already doing the work and get involved with it, the more likely we are to be heard by the people that need to hear us.
So, a way that I thought of that AI can actually help this whole issue that we're facing right now, this crisis that we're in right now, is helping us teach individuals, first of all, helping us recruit the right individuals to be in court reporting schools, to learn this actual trade, this craft that we're able to do, and help as well figure out what is working for certain students, what is not working for certain students, so that we can accelerate their progress so that they are graduating faster and so that we have less of a shortage. And we probably wouldn't be dealing with these issues right now, because no matter what they say, a human is always going to be better. A human stenographer in place, live in a proceeding, is just always going to be better, no matter what.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought up that specific idea that, like, AI can actually be the solution to the court reporter shortage, that AI is currently being used to plug the gap. Because that's what the beautiful thing about AI is that it's a tool, and we can design it or use it to design tools to better educate people to become reporters. Because, as an example, when I was getting California certified and, I went to school in New York, I never learned the California codes and laws. And there's a whole section of that when you're getting your CSR called professional practice. And I remember having to scramble to find the information that nobody ever taught me in a formal setting. And I had to reach out to all these professors, and they gave me some study guides. Whereas then the chatbots hit the scene. All I needed to do was copy the entire section of codes and laws that apply to court reporters, put it into a chatbot, and then I could have asked it, hey, can you make me some, like, flashcards or some, like, just make some quiz questions so that way I can learn the answers and train myself? That's a really easy way to use AI to our advantage, to just, like, teach us things that are otherwise kind of difficult for us to figure out. And that's why I think ultimately AI is going to help in a lot of ways, because at the end of the day, again, this paper makes it super clear, there is no replacing a human stenographer, period. Like, there probably never will be. Tech can get better. It can get better at identifying words, but there will always be situations where only a human will be able to navigate. Always be the case that a human needs to be a witness to what's going on. And that's really all that it boils down to. It's not even economics. It's not even whether we should or shouldn't develop this technology. It's just that, like, if you want the record you want, it's on us. And that's why I'm proud to be a court reporter. And I think now is still a great time for more people to become court reporters and learn our craft, because it's still going to be around. And as long as we organize together, it's going to be around for a long time.
Me too. I am so proud to be a court reporter. I love this industry, and I'm really looking towards the future, and I can't wait to see how it develops and how we flourish for so many years to come.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. If you're looking to unlock your potential in the world of stenography, visit stenokey.com. Whether you're brand new to steno and have never attended a traditional steno school, or you're an existing student aiming to progress at a better pace, we have got you covered. Stenokey's comprehensive courses and self-paced lessons cater to all skill levels, from beginners to seasoned court reporters. And for working court reporters looking to improve their real-time accuracy and speed, our training can help you surpass any AI real-time feed. So take the first step towards your success at stenokey.com. And until next time, stay focused, stay motivated, and keep writing.